left Scotland far behind, evicted from the Highlands, told to go and find a new life in America across the Atlantic Sea, where I joined the millions of other refugees who ended up at Ellis Island as the century began. The wretched of the earth from every foreign land. When I came to this country, broken and bereft, I quickly saw I'd have been no worse off if I'd never left. Such awful deprivations as I'd never had to face, born by Swedes and Russians, Africans and every other race. Millions of people trying not to end up dead from cholera or black lung or being clubbed on the head. When I came to this country to have something on my fork, it was obvious the first thing was to get out of New York. I learned to hop the freight train, some other stiffs and I got a westbound rattler to give Oregon a try. Signed up for the logging camps, became a timber beast. If I'd stayed there any longer, I'd have surely been deceased. When I came to this country, I worked the copper mines in Butte. I was a candy dancer in Spokane in a candy dancer suit. I heard the rebel girl speak one night in a railway yard. I joined the union right away and got my first red card. Became a hobo organizer for the one big union grand, preaching the wobbly gospel across the starving land. When I came to this country, I soon enough lost track of the number of times I felt a billy club upon my back, or how many times I saw the tents with freezing kids working in the mines instead of living on the skids. How many times I heard the horrid crying from below of those trapped there in the dungeons with nowhere left to go. When I came to this country, it was a hopeful time of desperation. The red flags flew all across the nation, but when the war began in Europe, we refused to die and kill. We refused to fight a boss's war and serve the boss's will. That's when they got the Legion to burn down our union halls all across the land where there used to be 4 walls. When I came to this country, I had no great expectations, but I didn't think I'd end up back here awaiting deportation. On a steamship on the Hudson, I watched the sunset fade, with 20,000 others swept up in the Pomerades. Counting myself lucky that I'm still alive, remembering the moment when I first arrived. When I came to this country, when I came to this country, when I came to this country. So there's some recent developments, some things that have been learned about events that took place in the 1970s. And this is a story about some things that happened in Scotland and Chile. Jet fighters bombed the palace. We all watched it on TV. The 11th of September, 1973. All across the world, people cried in vain as we heard stories of the students being tortured and slain. Stories of the workers, shop stewards and the rest being slaughtered at the new dictator's behest. Labor groups condemned it, said we were on the workers' side, including all the engineers of East Kilbride. People organized a boycott of General Pinochet, who had overthrown Allende with a hawker-hunter jet. Then a few months later, March of '74, Bob Fulton came to work at the Rolls-Royce factory floor. He looked at the orders that had come in that day and found crates with jet engines from Chile. Jet engines from the Air Force across the ocean wide, sent to be repaired in East Kilbride. It didn't take a minute for Fulton and his mates to come to the decision they would not touch these crates. Soon 4,000 Rolls-Royce workers voted they agreed to stand with the Chileans in their hour of need. Management decried them, the Tories screamed and cussed, but the hawker-hunter engines were left to sit and rust. Nowhere else on earth were workers qualified to repair the engines sitting there in East Kilbride. It's often hard to know if you've changed anything a whit, but decades later, a Chilean general would admit. For a time in Santiago, there were no fighters in the sky, because the whole Chilean Air Force had not one jet that could fly. They may not have changed the world, this group of union engineers, but these crates of metal sat corroding for 4 years. So here's to British Labour, how for 4 years it tried to do what could be done from East Kilbride. Jet fighters bombed the palace, we all watched it on TV, the 11th of September, 1973. And that was you who told me about that story, back in the back of the room, I believe. And there was a demonstration in Berlin against the rising cost of housing, and somebody sent me a photo of somebody holding up a sign that said, "Don't kill your landlord," and which is the title of this next song. But the "don't" was very small, and the "kill your landlord" was much bigger, which is absolutely exactly getting the idea. If your rent has doubled, there are different ways to cope with the situation and make it through your days. There are therapeutic methods, such as playing darts with a picture of your landlord's private body parts. You can get a roommate, or 2 or 3 or 4, build a loft and squeeze more beds onto every floor. You can scratch up each Mercedes that you find on your street. Say fuck off yuppie scum to each yuppie scum you meet. But do not kill your landlord, it will not end well. You'll be living rent-free inside a prison cell. You can pay a visit very early in the morn to where your landlord lives, but don't forget the bullhorn. You can form a samba band, march up and down his road. You can play with firecrackers as you watch them explode. You can sing a song about 1848, when renters burned the mansions down and overthrew the state. You can talk about your landlord, how much you'd like to see him dead. Just make sure it remains only something that you said. Yes, do not kill your landlord, it will not end well. You'll be living rent-free inside a prison cell. Say hi to your neighbors, organize a meeting, form a tenants union so it won't be something fleeting. Have some demonstrations, make plans for rent strike, create a list of demands, perhaps something like No more rent increases, fix things that break, get rid of all that mold in the walls, for goodness sake. No more no-cause evictions, no more acting like an ass, no more acting like a member of a feudal ruling class. But do not kill your landlord, it will not end well. You'll be living rent-free inside a prison cell. It is a very surreal thing to live in the failed states of America. When you're working 2 jobs and living in a tent, when a house costs $1 million and you can't pay the rent, when politicians say they'll help but it keeps getting worse each time the landlord lobby pulls the strings of the purse, when the human right to housing isn't even part of the debate, you know you're living in a failed state. When millions of citizens are spending half their lives locked up in a prison for trying to survive. When laws must be broken just to have a place to stay. When the prisons pay the senators to look the other way. If you have to be a criminal to put food upon your plate, you know you're living in a failed state. When you're facing climate breakdown, when the trees are all on fire, when half the country's underwater, when a climate change denier runs the nation, and the opposition party votes for oil rigs and pipelines. This is not so much a country as it is a corporation buckling under its weight, you know you're living in a failed state. When your nation is an empire facing daily blowback, and the only thing your leaders can think to do is attack. Bipartisan consensus that we've got to spend $700 billion before the year's end on a military budget to make America great, you know you're living in a failed state. When almost every day some psycho with a gun has to open fire on a crowd before it's done. When a music festival becomes a free fire zone, and all they can say is it's okay now he was acting alone. Buy some armor, pray to God, and hide behind a gate, you know you're living in a failed state. You know you're living in a failed state. You know you're living in a failed state. Was rejected in 1992. Most Danish voters were afraid they already knew that it would not be a good thing to give away control to the likes of neoliberals like Mitterrand and Kohl. It was voted down, but then in 1993 the vote was held again for the Maastricht Treaty. This time the ruling parties got what they were looking for, and that very night the city sounded like a place at war on the streets of Copenhagen. The air was full of anger, the reasons for it clear. It had been voted down only just last year, and now we're just supposed to give our sovereignty away to institutions that don't care what people have to say on the streets of Copenhagen. Stones flew, windows broke, more than many folks could bear as the riot cops fired tear gas in the air. Before the night was over, the cops stood right there in that spot, fired pistols at the crowd. 11 people were shot on the streets of Copenhagen. When hard-won rights are lost, when ruling parties throw them out, they may pretend to wonder what the riots are about. But anywhere near Nørrebro, you'd find few who disagree about exactly what happened in 1993 on the streets of Copenhagen. On the streets of Copenhagen. Before they destroyed the premier punk rock social center in Copenhagen in 2007, the squatters at Ungdomshuset, the House of Youth, were doing different kinds of actions to bring attention to the fact that the government wanted to destroy their house. And most of the actions involved flying bottles and flaming bicycle tires. But they decided they were going to try to do different things. And so one thing the punks decided to do was to have a cafe in the middle of the most expensive area of cafes that was near where the squat was in Nørrebro. And they set up a cafe in the middle of this sort of cobblestone area surrounded by cafes. And they set up their own cafe, but their cafe had no walls, and the cups had no coffee in them, and most notably, none of the people sitting in the cafe were wearing clothes. And, the idea, nobody explained the idea to me. It was just that they're going to do this naked cafe. I knew that much. And then after 10 minutes of the naked cafe, I was supposed to sing this song. And I knew my assignment, but I wasn't sure what the point was exactly of the naked cafe. But presumably, it was to attract the attention of the media or the police or the yuppies. But as it turned out, none of them were interested in naked punks. It was like total disinterest. They just didn't even look at them. And the only people who noticed the naked punks was the owner of the kebab shop across the street, who nobody had considered this possibility apparently, but he was not happy about the naked punks, and he started handing out eggs to his customers, who then of course started throwing them at us. And they did not hit my guitar, they did not hit anybody in the face, so I think they were kind of aiming pretty well, but they did hit some of the naked punks. And then a photographer was taking pictures of the folks throwing the eggs, and then they wanted him to erase the pictures because they didn't want to get busted for throwing eggs at us. And then the photographer erased the pictures out of solidarity with possibly undocumented egg throwers, which was a wonderfully, strangely anarchist Danish moment, And this was my song assignment. I don't drive a car because they run on gas, but if I did, it'd run on biomass. I ride a bike or sometimes a skateboard, so fuck off all you drivers and your yuppie hordes sitting all day in the traffic queues. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't eat meat, I just live on moldy chives or the donuts that I found in last week's dumpster dives. Look at you people in that restaurant, I think you are so sad when you could have been eating bagels like the ones that I just had. I think it is a shame all the bourgeois things you do. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't wear leather and I like my clothes in black, and I made a really cool hammock from a moldy coffee sack. I like to hop on freight trains, I think that is so cool. It's so much funner doing this than being stuck in school. I can't believe you're wearing those brand new shiny shoes. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't have sex, and there will be no sequel because heterosexual relationships are inherently unequal. I'll just keep on moshing to Anti-Flag and Crass until there are no differences in gender, race, or class. All you brainwashed breeders, you just haven't got a clue. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't believe in leaders, I think consensus is the key. I don't believe in stupid notions like representative democracy. Whether or not it works, I know it is the case that only direct action can save the human race. So when I see you in your voting booth, then I know it's true. I'm a better anarchist than you. I am not a pacifist, I like throwing bricks, and when the cops have caught me and I've taken a few licks, I always feel lucky if I get a bloody nose, because I feel so militant and everybody knows. By the time the riot is all through, I'm a better anarchist than you. I'm a better anarchist than you. Give to me a moment, I'll tell you of a woman who was a heroine of mine. It's half a century since she's gone, but her vision and her light still shines. She was born in 1880, and she spent her life speaking out against injustices she saw. Traveling and writing and supporting tactics, both within and far outside the law. Give to me a moment, I'll tell you of a member of the industrial workers of the world who responded to the critics who said she was a stooge for waving her red flag unfurled, for saying how could she do otherwise and still call herself a feminist? Or did they believe that women got a pass, that women were not workers, subject to the bosses, just like every other member of their class? Give to me a moment, I'll tell you of a comrade, a celebrity, a thinker, and a fighter. Her weapons were her words, and she used them as an expert, as a touring speaker, as a writer. When workers were on strike, she beseeched the public to come out and support the union's stand. She said there could be no future except in solidarity, every race, ability, and gender, hand in hand. Give to me a moment, I'll tell you of a citizen who spoke up against Wilson's war, who said it's best to go to prison than to go kill other people to settle some imperial score. Without this voice of reason, this servant of the people, the world surely wouldn't be the same. So here's to a fearless warrior who could neither hear nor see. Fellow worker, Helen Keller was her name. Give to me a moment, I'll tell you of a woman who was a heroine of mine. So here's a little song about cause and effect, which there's a heck of a lot of politicians don't understand this, but it's a simple idea. Haven't even started cleaning up the mess and many souls departed is anybody's guess. They're already proposing that they turn it up a notch. Time they were imposing an ever tighter watch. Terrorists everywhere, by which they do not mean Norwegians with blonde hair, American Marines, the fighter planes, all of those who die when the bombs rain down from way up in the sky. If you bomb somebody, they might just bomb you back. Pundits on the TV will talk of integration. Most of them agree there's too much immigration. They'll talk of social policy, things they should have done before. Whatever you say, don't mention the war if you bomb somebody. They might just bomb you back. They'll cry out for more cops and laws against encryption. Time to pull out all the stops of every description. Time to torture suspects, send them back from where they came. Life goes as you'd expect in the imperial game. They'll say that now we must strengthen our will. We mustn't bow down to those we kill, to those we maim, to the countries lost. Don't mention their names or the cost. If you bomb somebody, they might just bomb you back. You bomb somebody, they might just bomb you back. So it's I have written a lot of songs about the current occupant of the White House. But they're kind of boring, I think. Because I increasingly feel like it's the most important thing to say about that man is that he was delivered to the world by neoliberalism. The Democratic Party specifically gave us Donald Trump, just as Macron will give us Le Pen. You know, if things keep going, if he keeps privatizing France, then, you know, the French will react just like the Americans did, I suspect, and elect a fascist. It's just, they could also elect a socialist. Mélenchon did quite well, you know, but it's going to be one or the other. There's not really a middle ground between prosperity and misery. You know, it's one or the other. So this is a song about the former occupant of the White House who presided over the impoverishment of the United States. I turned on my TV, though it was hard to see these men who would be head of state. What a great country from sea to shining sea. We watched the Republicans debate. Newt stood with his third wife and said, "You bet your life the president is a red. He wants to tax the rich a lot, take your limo and your yacht. He wants to have the bankers' heads. And if he gets in again, he'll paint the White House pink, and then he'll hire Chavez as his VP. Then we'll be right on track to give capitalism the sack, along with the insurance industry. If only it were true, if only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't be you. If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true." They're all sing-alongs if anybody feels inspired, if you can figure out the chorus quick enough. He'll give everyone food stamps and wheelchair ramps. He'll subsidize windmills and maple syrup. He'll cripple industries with eco-friendly policies, and pretty soon we will be just like Europe. He'll shut down oil wells, give out solar cells to every home in Delaware and Illinois. He'll ban logging in the parks. He'll send the works of Karl Marx to the homes of every American girl and boy. He'll abolish pesticides. He'll be giving out free rides and free lunches too in his high-speed trains. He'll start lots of public works full of union perks. He'll fill all the cities up with bicycle lanes. If only it were true, if only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't you? If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true. Watch out, his critics tell, this shall be our death knell. He'll pull the troops out and end all of our wars. He'll gut military spending, our empire will be ending, and soon we'll be invaded by the Moors. He'll legalize all drugs, give away beer mugs and hookahs to every child, and Korans. He'll ban religions from the schools, give 40 acres and a mule to every person who makes less than 50 grand. He'll close Guantanamo to torture, he'll say no. He'll make us all drive electric cars. He'll reinstate the fairness doctrine, take off the damn flag pin, and he'll put Rupert Murdoch behind bars. If only it were true, if only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't you? If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true. If only it were true, if only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't you? If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true. So I've never had anything close to a hit, but this next song, it gets heard enough times in Mexico that at least once per day I get a message in Spanish saying, "Long live Ireland." And that's my claim to fame. That's my highest achievement in life, basically, I think. My name is John Riley. I'll have your ear only a while. I left my dear home in Ireland. It was death, starvation, or exile. When I got to America, it was my duty to go. Enter the army and slog across Texas to join in the war against Mexico. And it was there, in the pueblos and hillsides, that I saw the mistake I had made. Part of a conquering army, with the morals of a bayonet blade. And there amidst all these poor dying Catholics, screaming children, the burning stench of it all, myself and 200 Irishmen decided to rise to the call. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Batallion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Batallion, and we fought on the Mexican side. Lovely. We marched neath the green flag of St. Patrick, emblazoned with erangel bra. Right at the harp and the shamrock and Libertad Republica. Just 50 years after Wolf Tone, 5,000 miles away, the Yanks called us a legion of strangers, and they can talk as they may. But from Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. 5 major battles. Churubusco was the last. Overwhelmed by the cannons from Boston, we fell after each mortar blast. Most of us died on that hillside at the service of the Mexican state. So far from our occupied homeland, we were heroes and victims of fate. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. I heard some nice harmonies there. I breathe the air that you do. I drink the water just like you. I eat the fruits of this land. I hold the apple in my hand. I am I feel the rain fall on my face, like the rest of the human race. I hold my baby tightly when he cries. I see him when I look into his eyes. I am when I walk for miles in the summer heat. Like you, I get blisters on my feet. When I cut myself with blood, I will perspire. When I try to climb over the wire, so the news is usually pretty dismal when you look at it, and but every now and then there's a very pleasant headline, and it often is something along the lines of "Banker begins prison sentence," and then you look at the next line, and it's always Reykjavik. Nobody else seems to be able to put their bankers in prison except for the Icelanders. So I wrote this song in appreciation for the people that know where to put their bankers. It's a sort of a sing-along. It's more of a shout-along, I suppose. Iceland is an island with 500,000 or so Vikings, mostly known for volcanoes, hot springs, and fishing. Known for its welfare state, for being good and socialistic. Certainly not known for being corrupt or nepotistic, but in the USA and Europe, when they were deregulating banks, Iceland's politicians took bribes and joined their ranks. Soon you had a situation one would think just couldn't be. A bank whose debt was worth 10 times the country's GDP. When Wall Street imploded, sure enough it spread. Banks all over the world were floating in the red. All over the world, the governments made the plan to cut spending and raise taxes on the working woman and working man. The banks were bailed out while the people had to pay. But in Iceland, people thought there must be a better way. And the earth stood still a moment. Fear was struck in every top. When Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers to fuck off. Folks were in the streets in Reykjavik and just couldn't be ignored. They said this is a debt we Icelanders can't afford. Let's guarantee deposits of all our people, yes indeed. But as for all the speculators motivated by their greed to make really dumb investments, to them Iceland said good luck. Sorry for your losses, but we don't really give a fuck. The 1% all trembled when they took away the trough. When Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers to fuck off. The UK called them terrorists, said we cannot let this stand. Who do these peacenik blondes think they are in Iceland? They threatened isolation and economy in flames. But the Icelanders said sorry, but the banks can settle their own claims, though that might be harder for them now that they're under house arrest. Or else they fled the country as they were most unwelcome guests. And now Reykjavik's recovery just makes the fat cats scoff. Since Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers to fuck off. If you haven't heard of this example, perhaps there's a reason why. The owners of the world don't want this kind of shit to fly. They say we all must pay up in this shakedown by the mob. If we can't afford to pay the rent cause we don't have a job, they say it's not their problem. If we're forever shackled by their debt, we must save the 1% from the fate they should have met. But there is an alternative, though it makes the fat cats cough. Since Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers to fuck off. Since Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers to fuck off. Beautiful. Well, they are passing more and more neoliberal reforms in many countries, and I can see they've been doing that at the airport, and the airport now really sucks. I mean, there's going to be another one. Maybe it won't suck, who knows, but if they run it the way they're running this one, it's going to suck. And it's kind of, it's useful, I think, in Europe generally. It's useful that England exists, because everybody can look to England and see what happens if you really fuck everything up. You know, if you just privatize the whole economy, then what does it look like? You know, how are the schools? How's the railways? How's the cost of housing? You know. This is a song about the consequence of austerity budgets. At 1 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, no one knew what was in store. A fire started, quickly spread, till it covered every floor. Stairwell blocked, no way out, smoke and fire all around. Parents grabbed their little babies, dropped them 10 floors to the ground. People cried to no avail. 24 stories tall, engulfed in flames. The fire ladders were just like toys, no use at all. There were no sprinklers, few smoke alarms, fire extinguisher, out of date. All repairs, if ever done, always too little, too late. When they built Grenfell, they believed housing was a human right. But all that changed. Now if you're not rich, you should be kept out of sight, out of sight, out of town, or wrapped up neatly, plastic clad. The flats may all be falling apart, but at least they don't look too bad. The residents had tried to warn the authorities for years and years, but all their letters, all their blog posts, all their calls fell on deaf ears. Council housing left to rot, taking space for by and by. It would someday be turned to dust in the forward march to gentrify. And in the meantime, if people perish with their children in their laps, it's the price the market has to pay to house the poor in fire traps. If this were murder, if this were murder, if this were murder, if this were murder, if this were murder. Now I have no idea when I started, and I'll do one more. And then we'll take a break, and then we have more of the wonderful Rathmines. Fantastic. I'm not just saying that because they're all in the room. They're wonderful. I liked them before I met them, actually. I heard them on the internet. Well, speaking of the internet, or not speaking of the internet, they have CDs right there. I have CDs too. I'll put them on that table over there. And I have T-shirts and an email list. And I am, as has been mentioned, banned from Facebook. But if you get on my email list, you'll hear about my next tour, and you'll hear about new songs. You get new songs in your inbox when I write them, and other odds and ends. Once a week, I try. I'm going for once a week. I'm trying. But I'm not. I think there was 1 year recently when I actually did succeed in the once a week thing, but other years I've come pretty close. This is a song about the grandmother of a friend of mine in Hamburg. Katharina Jakob, long before she took that name, was organizing workers in Hamburg just the same. Organizing beneath a flag of deepest red, a new dawn of peace and freedom clearly shining in her head. Katharina Jakob first was sent to jail when the trappings of democracy all began to fail. She was frequently arrested, in and out of custody, while her first husband was in hiding from the Nazis. Katharina Jakob was acquitted of a crime, but the Gestapo had the last word. They weren't finished with her this time. She was sent to Ravensbrück, a killing hunger at her side. She heard of the execution, how her second husband died. For Katharina Jakob, the end was close at hand. She was on a death march with a ragged, starving band, marching through a forest, being led by the SS. What would happen hours later seemed impossible to guess. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. They all sang the Internationale. Katarina Jakob thought about her children and the friends and comrades taking care of them, not knowing yet if any of them survived, not knowing that soon she'd see her daughters both alive. Katarina Jakob watched the German soldiers fleeing, streaming from the east, that's what she was seeing. Allied bombers flew above them, she thought they all might die, and then soon there was the silence of all the SS men. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. They all sang the Internationale. Katarina Jakob saw red flags flapping in the breeze above the Russian tanks, and she fell upon her knees. And so many different voices in so many different tongues sang the most beautiful song that could ever have been sung. In German, Lithuanian, in Polish and in Dutch, a myriad of melodies as never had been such. In Russian and in Yiddish, Italian and French, emerging from the forest beneath the trench. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. They all sang the Internationale. Folge die Signale auf zum letzten Gefecht. Die Internationale erkämpft das Menschenrecht. Folge die Signale auf zum letzten Gefecht. Die Internationale erkämpft das Menschenrecht.
Vielen Dank. If you sing the chorus to this song, you can break U.S. federal law. If you ever come to the U.S., of course. Probably won't work from here, maybe, I don't know, on a military base or something. Rodney Coronado was arrested for a speech that he gave one evening by the San Diego beach. He stated his opinions, they sounded just like mine. Now they want to put him behind bars till 2029. Prosecutor said the problem was the speech, it showed intent. I couldn't figure out exactly what that meant. You can't describe an action, say you thought that it was foul. So what'll happen when we sing this? Who the heck can tell? But we don't like the condo and we're gonna burn it down. Corporate terrorists drive them out of town. We'll bring a lot of gasoline, pour it on the floor, light a match, say a prayer and run right out the door. Burn it down, burn it down. We're going to burn it down. Burn it down, burn it down, burn it down. Lovely. Now if you just sang that chorus, then you just broke the law to be an eco-terrorist. Now you just gotta flap your jaw. And hey, who knows, by the time you have a chance to blink, whether you're a criminal might depend on what you think. But we don't like the bulldozer, we're gonna burn it down.
Corporate terrorists, drive them out of town. We'll bring a lot of gasoline, pour it on the floor, light a match, say a prayer, and run right out the door. Burn it down, burn it down. We're going to burn it down, burn it down, burn it down, burn it down. First they came for Rod, maybe next they'll come for you. Let me tell you what I think all of us should do. Sing the song with me, raise your fist and caterwaul. If we fight together, they can't arrest us all. 'Cause we don't like the Walmart and we're gonna burn it down. Corporate terrorists, drive them out of town. We'll bring a lot of gasoline, pour it on the floor, light a match, say a prayer, and run right out the door. Burn it down, burn it down. We're going to burn it down, burn it down, burn it down, burn it down. One time with conviction and intent. Burn it down, burn it down. We're going to burn it down, burn it down, burn it down, burn it down. When the world has gone crazy and it's all becoming clear, when they're gunning down our comrades and it seems the end is near, as they're loading up the launchers for the tear gas grenades, we can take off our bandanas and kiss behind the barricades. When it's madness all around, and you can see this at a glance, we will sing and we will cry, we will laugh and we will dance, as they shout their marching orders beneath the helicopter blades. We shall seize the moment for a kiss behind the barricades. They will try to break our spirit, and at times they may succeed, but our love for the world is stronger than their greed. When the building is surrounded and hope begins to fade, in my final hour, a kiss behind the barricades. As the movement grows, there will be hills and bends, but at the center of the struggle are your lovers and your friends. And the more we hold each other up, the less we can be swayed. Here's to love and solidarity and a kiss behind the barricades. Love.
Well, I could keep going, you know. It's okay. But let's see. Do we have any requests or anything? Let's see.
Standing Rock.
Standing Rock. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's see. I got that somewhere. Yeah.
Westerns, after all the lies, after making every effort to deny that history is happening, it isn't in the past. That the Indian Wars continue, that she was not the last. After building all the pipelines, after spraying all the gas, after desecrating graveyards, being told they shall not pass, after shooting all the horses, after driving in with tanks, after sending in the dogs with soldiers in their ranks, they're standing up at Standing Rock. After all the fire water, after all the famine, after killing all the buffalo, after taking all the salmon, after taking all the water, to slurry all the coal, after mining the uranium from a million giant holes, after stealing and lynching, shooting people as they dance, after trying hard to make sure there'd be no second chance, declaring Indian country to be one big sacrifice zone, at no point ever trying to acknowledge or atone, they're standing up at Standing Rock. After all the cities ransacked, after all the cities burned, after all the centuries when almost no one even learned that these towns ever existed, up and down the coast, up and down the Mississippi, leaving colonists to boast this land is our land now, a new homeland for the white. After all the missionaries taking children in the night, after all the slaughter, after centuries of theft, watch the people riding to defend what's left. They're standing up at Standing Rock. They're standing up at Standing Rock. At Standing Rock.